What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody. Guys, we have done something similar to this a week or two back, talking about the draft picks and giving them grades this year, but we haven't really talked about the best and worst ones, and we also haven't really talked a whole lot about 2022's free agent portal and kind of how that helped the Indianapolis Colts this year. So we're going to go ahead and hop into it, talking best and worst of the free agents and best and worst of the draft picks from 2022 and what we can look forward to going into next year. Okay, so we'll start with the free agents. And Cody, I think it's safe to say who clearly the best free agent signing was this year, and without a question was Stephon Gilmore, who came over from Carolina. I mean, you and I, from the moment Stephon Gilmore signed with this team, we said it. This guy is going to bring another dimension to this defense. And this year, I mean, Stephon Gilmore was nothing short of spectacular this year for this team.
Absolutely. He was best by far, was a difference maker and in so many different games. It's just a bummer that the offense screwed it up so many times because, it kind of stifled, I guess, our excitement for how good Stephon Gilmore was down the stretch. And won the Colts, I think, 3 games this last year. They only won 4 games, guys. And Stephon Gilmore won 3 of those. Or he was a key part in winning 3 of those. And so this dude is just on another level still. He's still a Pro Bowl type player. Wasn't perfect, wasn't necessarily the defensive player of the year he was a few years ago, but he didn't need to be that for the Colts, right? He just needed to be a above average to, Pro Bowl kind of corner. And that's exactly what he was. And I think above average is a little bit disrespectful, honestly. He was fantastic for the Colts, and he was exactly what they needed when they signed him to that 2-year deal. I mean, he earned every penny of that this last year, Derek. And, he was pretty durable down the stretch, and he was just one of those guys that, you had questions about accountability and things on the team this last year, but Stephon Gilmore was a guy that every single week he was accountable, and he brought the energy and brought the juice every single week. So Gilmore, 100%, was a great addition, Ballard's best addition probably in a long time out of free agency. And it just goes to show when Ballard does choose to go after some bigger name free agents, look what happens. He found a guy here in Gilmore that, yes, he did command a lot of money. Absolutely. But it was definitely worth it, 100%. So, Stephon Gilmore, you were right. I think he was the best free agent signing by a long shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of the 4 wins that the Indianapolis Colts got this year, I mean, Stephon Gilmore had to put his skills to the test to win the game for us. The Kansas City Chiefs game forced the turnover. Denver, last play of the game, they tried him. The Raiders game, they tried him with Devontae Adams. He was locked down this year, man. I mean, he was one of the top 10 corners in the league this year. And I mean, that's incredible to say that because at the age of 32, and this guy's still playing like a top 10 corner in the league, he is still locked down. So it's very fantastic that they brought somebody like him in to be a solidified corner. He was your clear number 1 corner. And he definitely did a good enough job this year to keep this Colts defense honest on everything that it could do. So great pickup there by Chris Ballard and them. This next one really wasn't a free agent signing, but it was a guy that was brought over in the free agency period. He was the second move actually that the Indianapolis Colts got, and it was via trade. So this was Yannick Ngakoue, who was traded from the Raiders to Indy during free agency, brought over on a 1-year, $13 million deal. And I mean, Cody, it took a while for Yannick Ngakoue to finally get going, but just like with a bunch of players for the defense, like it seemed like ever since week 5 or 6, it just felt like Yannick Ngakoue really started to settle down, and we started seeing how good of a player he actually could become.
Yeah, I mean, nearly had 10 sacks. If he didn't suffer that throat, I think it was a throat injury or something like that. I think he easily would have had double-digit sacks this year for the Colts, and that's something that they haven't had in a long, long time. And so, yeah, it wasn't necessarily the most impactful sacks all the time, but hey, 10 sacks, nearly 10 sacks is 10 sacks. So, I mean, you can't argue with that. But I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not, but I mean, I think you definitely can't ignore that. And I think situationally, he's still a good pass rusher. He can still, impact the game and, get to the quarterback a good number of times. And so, yeah, I mean, I think overall it was a solid trade for the Colts when they got, traded away Rocky Sin and, got Yannick Ngakoue. I just wish he could have done a little bit more maybe in the run department and kind of showed his stuff there. But all in all, I mean, he still was able to have some games, put in some stretches where he looked really, really good getting after the quarterback. So yeah, he's definitely a guy that I think was a good on the positive side of a new acquisition.
Yep, absolutely. And then one last guy for the best free agents, and that was Rodney McLeod. You brought him over from the Philadelphia Eagles. You were hoping to have some veteran presence in that safety room. Again, the same thing that you had with Stephon Gilmore, right? You wanted another veteran presence that could lead some of these young guys to, try to improve their development. And Rodney McLeod outplayed his contract, Cody, 3.5 times. I mean, what Rodney McLeod was, Rodney McLeod was one of your best tacklers all year. Seemed to make a bunch of great plays this year for this defense. Just was always involved in the play. And again, just another good veteran player that Chris Ballard and company brought in, and it ended up working out for them. It really helped solidify their positioning. We didn't expect Rodney McLeod to play as much as he did this year, but he played pretty much the whole year, and he did not disappoint.
No, absolutely. He was exactly what this young safety room needed, that vet leader in there to really stabilize things, and especially because Nick Cross wasn't quite ready to be a full-time starter. It was just so easy for McLeod to step in there and, never relinquish it after that. And, hopefully, I know he's kind of been throwing around retirement. Hopefully he doesn't. I would selfishly love to have him back. Obviously, wish him well whatever he decides there, but would love to have Rodney McLeod back in a Colts uniform because you're right. I mean, he had the best season of his career. And he's played for some pretty good teams, and he's had some pretty good seasons. So Rodney McLeod, I would honestly say, Derek, I don't know if we had these in order, if Yannick was your number 2, but for me, Rodney is my number 2, just because I think you're right. He outplayed his contract, and I think he was less flashy, but I think he was definitely more consistent than Yannick was. And so I would say for him, just the expectations we had of him, maybe kind of being, the third safety, he came in and I think he was the number 1 safety this year for the Colts. So love Rodney McLeod and all he does, and would love to have him back for another year if that is possible, because I think he definitely was tremendous for this team this last year.
All right, now we move on to the worst of the free agents that we got this year.
Wow.
And this first one's not even close. It's clear the number 1, and it is Brandon Faison, who was also brought over from the Las Vegas Raiders this last year, looking to, be a backup corner for this team. And sure enough was Cody, I think if my numbers have been correct, he was deemed as one of the worst corners in all of football this last year.
Yeah.
Couldn't guard anybody, couldn't make tackles in the open field. Brandon Faison just never deserved to see the field this last year.
No, not at all. I mean, it seems like every time there was a completion being made, more than often, it seemed like it was going towards number 31. And so, yeah, I'm not touching him. I'm not bringing him back. I mean, it's almost a crime, Derek, that at one point he was getting snaps over Isaiah Rodgers. Like, I just think that is so silly.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, and just clearly the talent difference, it's just unbelievable that was even a thing. So yeah, don't bring him back at all. I think you can do literally better with anybody else at corner right now. He's in his late 20s, so he's not even really that young anymore. He kind of is what he is at this point at corner. So much prefer to literally do anything else at corner, and I would feel good about that moving forward. So yeah, I think he far and away. I don't know what the expectations were of him, so I don't know if I'd say that he was the worst free agency guy because we have some other guys here. I think expectations were maybe a little bit higher, but definitely didn't think he was going to be that bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and then for the final two free agents, one of them, again, same situation as Yannick Ngakoue, wasn't really a free agent, but was brought over in that time period. So it goes to the two quarterbacks that the Colts brought in this offseason, Matt Ryan and Nick Foles. Again, say what you will about this offensive line this year, Cody. We both have said our piece that the offensive line clearly was not good at all season. But Matt Ryan was the king of turnovers this year, an
Oh,
unworthy quarterback play. It is just not the Matt Ryan that we have ever seen. We have never seen Matt Ryan play that bad ever in a season. It was really drastically bad. And sure enough, that's why he gets put on this list. And Nick Foles has to go in there as well because you paid him a 2-year deal worth $6 million to ride the bench until the final 4 weeks of the season, only for, him to look even worse than any of the rest of the guys. So, he was a complete waste of money. I mean, both of these guys were a gigantic waste of money, and it didn't end up doing anything good for the Indianapolis Colts. So, yeah, that's why they're on this list, Cody.
yep. It was bad where you literally had no vertical offense at all for the majority of the season. You couldn't push the ball down the field. It was very clear that Matt Ryan's arm was shot. Like you weren't even attempting them. And so defenses weren't scared of you. You couldn't do anything. And we saw it, man. I mean, with these receivers, the receivers weren't perfect. They weren't great, but you just didn't even give them hardly any opportunities. I mean, what did we see in 2020 or 2021, excuse me, with Michael Pittman Jr.? We saw a lot of those jump balls, some 50-50 balls, and he would come down with a lot of those, right? He would do things. We didn't see any of that last year with Michael Pittman, none at all. And I think you just talk about you just didn't have a quarterback that you felt like could give him an opportunity, him or Alec Pierce. It was very far and in between. And when it did actually happen, though, I mean, we saw what happened, right? We saw what happened. Good things typically happen when you threw it up to them. I mean, you got 6'4", 6'3" wide receivers, and you have a 6'7" tight end, and you just don't use them. You don't throw to them. And it just was baffling to me. And I think it was just like these quarterbacks either, with Matt Ryan couldn't push the ball down the field, and with Nick Foles couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So, yeah, it was bad. It was really bad, and you're going to have some dead cat from both these guys if you choose to, and you should choose to move on from both of them this offseason. It's crazy that you paid that much to these two quarterbacks to have the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Just crazy to me how that happened. But yeah, it was rough last year, needless to say.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, we talked about the free agents. Let's talk about the best and worst draft picks. Clearly, I think you and I can both agree that the best draft pick from this year was Rodney Thomas. Rodney Thomas, the 7th round draft pick out of Yale, had 3 interceptions this year, or might be 4. I think it was 4, actually.
Yeah.
I think he had one at the end of the year. But again, a guy who we never expected to even play. We were questioning on whether or not he was even going to make the roster. And then sure enough, comes in through the first couple weeks of the season and just looks like he just belonged just from the very, very beginning. So I love it. Fantastic job by Rodney Thomas all year, who looked like a vet from the very beginning. Just took him no time whatsoever to get comfortable with the Colts secondary. It leaves you very hopeful that you can see him progress even more.
Yeah, he did great given the circumstances. And, he jumped a guy that was taken 4 rounds earlier, right? In Nick Cross. And I mean, he was a critical part to your secondary. He was that third safety that we all wondered, is Nick Cross going to be that this year? And clearly he wasn't, but Thomas showed this ability around the football, to make plays. And 4 interceptions as a rookie, especially coming into the 7th round, that is a massive steal. And I'm really excited to see how he continues to grow. I would love for him to just continue to learn under Rodney McLeod for another year. So I think that was just really helpful for him and working with Mike Mitchell, who we know, what Mike Mitchell is able to do working with guys like Quincy Wilson when he was a player in Indianapolis. So yeah, absolutely. Love Rodney Thomas here. I think he was, as far as value goes, clearly the best one from this last draft.
Yep, absolutely. And then the next one that we had, that would be Jelani Woods. Jelani, again, had a slow start to the year. I mean, it was funny, Cody, because we had, when we were starting the season out and when we were looking through training camp and everything, we sat back and we said, Jelani looks like the worst tight end of the whole group. And that included Andrew Ogletree, who was selected in the 6th round of the same draft, who was playing better in training camp than Jelani Woods was. So Jelani early on was struggling, man. I mean, he did not look like he really belonged early on. And then as soon as we saw him in that Chiefs game, 2 catches for 13 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, we knew Jelani Woods could be something special if they just threw him the dang football. And, there were a lot of times this year that Jelani Woods, it was ironic, Cody, because his first 7 catches, 5 of them were either for first downs or touchdowns. So, it went to show you that he was a phenomenal player and he's only going to develop more from here. People have a hard time understanding he's only been at the position for 2 years.
Yep.
This is a 2-year guy this is the kind of explosiveness that he has. The future is very bright for Jelani Woods, and he showed you when he gets the ball in his hands, he can be very deadly.
So just get the ball in his hands, Colts. That's all we ask.
Yeah,
he's
a quarterback this year that can actually throw the ball to Jelani Woods for the 50-50. Hey, I'm just saying, CJ Stroud likes to throw the 50-50 ball. I'll take my chances with him and Jelani Woods a couple times. I'll take my chances.
Whatever quarterback you bring in, Jelani is going to be a hot target for him. Like, you just think about coming into a situation where you have 2 wide receivers that are 6'3", 6'4", and 2 tight ends that are over 6'7", and 1 tight end that is that big but also can move like Jelani Woods can move. Dude, he's gonna be best friends with this rookie quarterback. I'm so excited for that pairing. Like the fact that Jelani was able to do what he was able to do, despite the Colts literally having no vertical threat on the offense from their quarterback position. He's just scratching the surface. You're right. Like, he's got everything you're looking for, physical tools. And it's crazy he was doing those things while he was still a very raw prospect last year. So he has a year now in the system. He has a year now at the NFL level. He knows what to expect a little bit more. I think the sky's the limit for a guy like Jelani Woods. The athletic traits are there. The playmaking ability is there. And now it's just like, give him the ball, give him more volume, and see how he responds to that. And I think he'll respond well.
Yep, absolutely. And then this third one, we had someone different, and then we changed it after we initially said it. But our next one's going to be Bernhard Raimann. We had Alec Pearson here before, but I think with how Bernhard Raimann ended the year, I think that it just makes total sense to have Bernhard Raimann in this situation because, Cody, we even look at all the charts that give you an idea of where Bernhard Raimann ended the year. Him and Braden Smith were some of the best tackles in all of the NFL. On the back half of that season, they were 2 of potentially the top 15 best tackles in all of the NFL. So it really went to show you, they flipped a switch at the end of that year, which leaves you thinking, okay, this could potentially work for the Indianapolis Colts going forward, for the next 10 years, that these guys could potentially be what you need. But, like we said, Bernhard Raimann started the year off so bad. And it sucked because he was thrown into a bad situation. He wasn't supposed to start. But we he had to because he was the best of the worst options. But he ended up improving very well. He actually did fairly well in the middle of the year, and then at the end of the year, he wasn't giving up sacks at all at the end of the year, and against some pretty good talent. So, I mean, I think you got to give it to the nod to Bernard Ryman here because of how consistent he was at the end of the year.
Yes. Yeah, and it's so much harder to see, and to recognize sometimes offensive linemen. But I think if you don't hear their name, that's a really good thing, right? And we were hearing Bernard Ryman's name a lot at the beginning of the year for just penalties, for holding, for false starts, for things like that. Just rookie lumps that you would assume, as a guy that's got thrown in that was not probably expecting to start. And now all of a sudden, boom, you're the guy, next man up mentality. I mean, and also talking about him in similar way to Jelani Woods, like he doesn't have a lot of experience at tackle either. Like he had one year at Central Michigan before jumping to the NFL level. That's a big jump, Derek. So I was very encouraged with how much he improved. He showed so much improvement down the stretch. And I think sometimes with rookie tackles, you just got to throw them in and see how they do. Sink or swim. And Bernard Ryman, he's swimming right now. And that's exciting. And I think he's definitely, obviously, we talked about this. His anchor's got to get better. He's got to get stronger, but he's got a whole offseason to do so. So I think he will. I think the big thing for him was just getting, up to speed with the NFL level and getting his technique down. And I think he's there from that standpoint, but he's just got to get stronger. And I think he will. And I think, the Colts are set at tackle for the next 5 to 10 years. I really do feel good about it. So Bernard Ryman definitely deserves to be on this list. Absolutely.
And we'll go ahead and now switch to the worst draft picks of this year. And that'll end this. I think what we're going to go with is the first one is Nick Cross. And not for the fact that, later on down the road, he could potentially be something even better. But of course, we had high expectations, Cody, that at some point this year, Nick Cross would get an opportunity to, go in and, maybe even make a standpoint on what kind of a player he could be. And he was the starter week 1, got burnt on 2 touchdowns, and the Colts pretty much just didn't play him all the rest of the year. Clearly, Nick Cross has a long way to go in order to be a, starting left or starting safety here in this league, especially for the Indianapolis Colts. And we're hoping that he continues to get down that road. But as it stands right now, where you drafted him in the 3rd round, you traded for him. You said how great of an athlete this guy could be, and that there's some things here that he's got that other guys just don't. And it was a disappointment of a season, to say the least.
It was. Yeah, absolutely. The expectations were high for him and just didn't live up to him year 1. But the good thing is, like you said, he's still got a lot of time to turn it around. So I'm not super concerned about it. I mean, I'm sure he's learned a ton just learning behind Rodney McLeod and failure is the best teacher often. So yeah, I think he'll be just fine. I am intrigued to see year 2, do we start to see a little bit more Nick Cross? Because I think he certainly, like you said, he's got the traits, he's got the talent. He just needs to get on the field a little bit more. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, for year 1, a little bit disappointing.
Yep. And then the next one, again, a player that we just didn't get to see all year, and that was Curtis Brooks. I think he became a fan favorite, very quickly. He was a 6th round draft pick out of UC, was part of that great UC defense that went to the Final 4 of the college football playoff that year. And, people were like, oh, this guy could be a dark horse for, potentially making this roster and, making some things happen. And sure enough, was on the practice squad for the majority of the year. So again, a player that a lot of people had high hopes for, and it just never turned out to be.
Yeah, it sucks because Curtis Brooks, I mean, we talked about the pass rush grade. He was one of the better pass rushers coming out in the interior. So it was just like, what happened? Was it the size? Like, I don't know what happened with Curtis Brooks, but certainly we were hyping him up because we just heard how good he was, and just never came to fruition for whatever reason. So didn't work out. It happens sometimes.
Yep. And then the last one, Eric Johnson, the second, just one of those, another player that, he was a role player this year, but just never really ended up doing much for this team. And, it's just kind of one of those situations where he was the fall guy in this situation. So Eric Johnson, again, a developmental prospect that you hope that you can get more out of, but he just didn't do much in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's not really disappointing. It's just kind of like he was just meh. Like, he was a later round pick. It's like we didn't really get anything out of our, rookie, defensive tackles. Like we thought maybe one of them would emerge, but just neither of them really did anything. So
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Let us know your thoughts on the best and worst of the free agents, the best and worst of the draft picks. Let us know your thoughts. Thank you guys again so much for all the support. We greatly appreciate it. Let us know if there is some video ideas that you guys want us to talk about, and we'll be sure to take a look at them. Thank you again so much for all the support. And as always, guys, go Colts.